Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here at the Hurricane Outlook into session for July 17th, 2020, recorded around 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Well, taking a look here at the latest sea surface temperature anomalies, last updated as is yesterday, July 16th. Again, not much has noticeably changed out here in the equatorial Pacific. In fact, the only thing that has really changed is we're continuing to see this area continuing to fall into the negative anomalies now, with these temperatures now approaching -2°C below the long-term average off the coast of South America right here. And that is likely to continue throughout the next several weeks to months. And again, we are continuing to see indications that we're going to get another very strong easterly wind event across here. Easterly winds, what they do is they actually upwell the waters out here. In that upwelling through the oceanic processes and the oceanic currents, these easterly winds then carry all this upwelling water and carry it out here into portions of the equatorial Pacific, mainly the Nino 3.4 region, which is right in through here, which is the area we really want to look for the ENSO conditions, either El Nino or La Nina. And in this case, we are in a cold neutral right now, likely heading towards a La Nina by the time we get into the fall and winter of this year. This conversely affects the Atlantic Basin in such that it reduces the vertical wind shear across here. It's more favorable for tropical cyclone formation. Today's going to be a very long update. We have a lot to talk about, so get your popcorn or whatever, get comfortable and relax. So basically in the Atlantic Basin right now, we have a fairly warm, positive Atlantic Multidecadal Oscillation Index, a phase 1 index. You can kind of see curling right through here. Now again, this area has been warming over the last several weeks or so, especially up here in the subtropics, and that has kind of flip-flopped, but we're seeing a lot more concentrated energy down here in the deep tropics compared to up here. It's not completely warm everywhere, and that is a good sign for keeping the instability contained in the main development region. Now, obviously, it's only July 17th. We don't have a lot of instability down here because of all the dry air, and we'll touch on that here in climatology in just a minute or so. But if we take a look here at the upper ocean heat content values updated as of this, as of the 11th here, this is it's about 6 days ago. This is the upper ocean heat content about 6 days ago on July 11th. That's the upper ocean heat content today. You go from the 11th to today, 11th to today. And you notice the change. We talked about the warming that's going to continue. It's not significant, but you notice it is rather significant in the oceanic terms. This area in the Atlantic Basin is pretty favorable, and we talked about how these tropical waves, if they can not come off here really about 20 north, and instead coming out here roughly at about 15 north latitude or about 10 north latitude here, they're running into a pretty favorable environment. And especially once you get out here in the Western Atlantic Basin and the Caribbean, these upper ocean heat content values are literally in the upper distribution, the upper echelon of the scale. These reds out here, yellows and greens and oranges, these are very indicative of that very deep upper ocean heat content values. And another way of looking at this is coming from the NOAA AML Hurricane Research Division. This is the 2018, this is today in 2018, so 2 years ago now. This was 2018 as of today. This is yesterday as of this year. And you notice how we have a fairly significant amount of upper ocean heat content, way more than we had in 2018 this time of the year. And you notice even out here in the Cabo Verde Islands, in south, we have a fairly good amount of upper ocean heat content, very indicative that we have more than enough ample water content depth out here to support intense tropical cyclones. And with the patterns setting up, a lot of these storms are not going to be coming out here this year. We'll talk about why that is here in a little bit. But again, this is a very ominous signal. And again, you notice if we compare that to 2018, again, the water content's not necessarily, especially in 2018, not necessarily that significant in this part of the world. But you notice, these, whites over here are basically in the upper fourth of the scale, literally topping the scale here. And even out here in the islands, the Lesser Antilles, Windwards, Barbados, you know, the upper ocean heat content is fairly significant, about 80 to, you know, approaching 100 tropical cyclone heat potential. And this is basically what that is. The, you know, 0 is basically the bottom, and basically 140 in that white color is the top of the scale. And this TCHP is fairly significant across here. And you notice how that's even touching the coastline. If we jump back to the other OHC map and we zoom in here, that is, you know, pretty much touching, especially in the Bahamas and off the Florida coast there. You know, these water content depths right near the coast are fairly concerning, because you can imagine, like we saw with Hurricane Michael in 2018, you know, Michael, you know, formed in October, where the OHC, you know, the upper ocean heat content was right along the coast like it is, you know, this year. And, you know, you can imagine a formidable system moving into very deep upper ocean heat content, strengthening on approach. That's what we're concerned about. And there is concern that could be another scenario later this year if something does come along, you know, in this part of the world. So we will have to really watch this, because this is a fairly big indicator of how the rest of the season could play out in terms of the intensity of these tropical cyclones. And you notice we are far above 2018 in terms of the upper ocean heat content. So that is very impressive, and that is certainly a little bit concerning, especially out here where the islands, you notice the upper ocean heat content in 2018 wasn't as prevalent, and here in 2019 that upper ocean heat content is fairly significant across the whole entire Western Atlantic Basin. And even out here in the main development region, we're seeing a fairly significant amount of extra added heat content. So we will be watching this. And again, we talked about that 10 north, you know, latitude line. That's right about here. You know, 20 north latitude is right about here. So about 15 to 10 north, or about 10 to 15 north latitude is where the most favorable conditions are right now, and then obviously stretching into the Gulf of Mexico, in the southwest Atlantic near the Bahamas, and off the Carolina coastline and the Florida coastline. Now, that's the upper ocean heat content, but we're now taking a look here at the actual water temperatures. This is the skin temperature. Basically, this is just taking a look at the very surface water temperature, the very surface of the water. This is the CDAS methodology, courtesy of tropicaltidbits.com. Again, this is analyzed this morning at about 1 o'clock in the morning. And again, these numbers are just impressive. The sea surface temperatures in this area, especially off the Florida coast, the Bahamas, running into the Gulf of Mexico, even, you know, the Northern Caribbean, even out here in the Gulf Stream off the Carolina and Florida coastlines, running about 30 to 31 Celsius. That is fairly significant, because you're talking the upper end of that scale. You're not talking about, you know, just a little bit of, you know, 30 to, you know, you're not talking about, you know, 28, 29. You're talking 30 to 31 Celsius. That's fairly significant. That's fairly decent upper ocean heat content. And we will be, or decent surface temperatures rather, excuse me. And again, even out here near the islands, about 28, 29 Celsius out there near Barbados. And just, I'm telling you, you know, the time is coming. And if we take a look here deeper into the deep tropics in the main development region, you know, these water content, or these, you know, water numbers at the actual, you know, skin surface here is fairly significant. And you notice everywhere I highlighted in that blue color is now more than supportive of these tropical cyclones to form and maintain itself. So the water temperatures are warming up. We talked about that. We talked about how that was going to occur. And now it's here. And the time to pay attention, if you weren't already, it's certainly time to start paying attention. So we'll leave it at that for right now. But again, these, you know, especially, you know, very concerning with the upper ocean heat content, fairly warm. The Atlantic Basin is almost ready now. That lid is about to pop off. Now, what's going out here in the broader picture over the next 5 days or so? This is the Ecology DuPage Cod Meteorology GOES 16 satellite viewer. Again, this is the actual sun, which is located right there. You kind of see that moving right across here. That moves right across all the way through there. But are we looking at anything over the next 5 days or so? Well, the short answer is no, but we do have some interesting things to talk about. First of all, you notice this broad area of an upper level system out here, way off the Canadian Maritimes there, out here far northern Atlantic Basin with a tailing cold front like that, and probably somewhat of an occluded front kind of draping back in through here. You can see a lot of very dry, stable air across this part of the world right now. That is fairly significant dry, stable air, and that is likely to be continuing over the next several days or so. There is still some Saharan air kind of buckled in through here, but once again, we talked about this. This is the Intertropical Convergence Zone, the ITCZ zone, and this zone is fairly active right now with showers and thunderstorms, especially to the south and east of the Cabo Verde Islands right now. This is producing very disorganized convection, nothing really trying to organize at the moment, but we will have to watch for some waves that try to amplify out here in the southwestern Atlantic Basin really past about 5 days or so. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. We had a mesoscale convective system, an MCS, kind of move from Oklahoma down into New Orleans and then out here across the Gulf of Mexico last night, and that is now sitting out here in the Gulf of Mexico with some disorganized showers and thunderstorms, mainly diurnal convection, favored by the heating of the day, basically. So we have not really seen anything that significant really try to kind of percolate over the last several days or so in and across this area. But we will be watching this as it has roughly about 24 to 36 hours over water, over water. So we will be watching it, but we're not expecting any development at this time. Disorganized showers and thunderstorms in the Florida Straits and the Bahamas right now. Again, not really any cause for concern at the current moment. Now, we were talking about how we might have to watch something, and this is taking a look here at the European ECMWF EPS 5-day 200 millibar velocity potential anomaly. This is the average. This is basically just taking an average from all the different 51 ensembles from the European and kind of combining them as a blend. That's what the mean and average ensembles are. And this is taking a look here at the velocity potential way up in the atmosphere, about 200 millibars. And basically what you're seeing is this red and orange is the sinking air in the atmosphere, and everywhere where you see the blue and green, that is your rising air favoring deeper convection, thunderstorms, etc. And again, this is only a 5 days starting from about the 21st of July through the 26th of July. Again, you do notice how we have a somewhat suppressed area of activity out here south in the far South Atlantic here off of South America. While we do have a fairly anomalous area of decent rising potential in the atmosphere, that is very indicative that we could see something try to percolate over the next several days or so. Again, this favoring rising air over most of the Atlantic Basin. However, currently we do have, this is valid as of current, we do have a suppressed Kelvin wave. This is basically the convectively coupled Kelvin waves. In the Atlantic Basin, this is your suppressed phase, and this is your active phase favoring convection. As you imagine, a suppressed phase basically means suppression of thunderstorms, and this is moving across the Atlantic Basin right now. This will likely shut down much in the way of any development over the next several days or so. But as we'll take a look at here, this is the GFS forecast, 850 millibar cyclonic vorticity in the atmosphere. Again, about 5,000 feet off the ground from tropicaltidbits.com. You notice how we have these little waves in the GFS forecast here, forecasting this little wave right here. Again, it's trying here. It's got a little closed isobar, basically, or line of equal pressure. And that wave, you notice how we get this little bundle of wave right here. This is about 12 hours ago. And that little wave axis tries to pass through Florida and into the Florida Straits, moves out into the Gulf of Mexico, and this is just beyond 5 days. And the GFS does try to go on past about 150 hours and try to close the system off. So, it's originating out here. It initially originated from a tropical wave. It moves across here, basically in through here, and tries to get going in the warm Gulf of Mexico. Now, what does the European show? Well, this is the European 850 millibars wind here, or cyclonic vorticity, the 0Z run. And you notice how, yes, it does have a system out here. It does have some vorticity, now, albeit weaker and a lot less broader, but it carries this same vorticity area into the Gulf of Mexico. So it is worth watching, although we don't have a lot of great model support for it. The GFS has consistently, I believe since the 0Z run, and we'll just jump back here to the 0Z run here. Since the 0Z run, I do believe, yeah, and even here at the 0Z run, it did try to develop something. So for the last 3 runs of the GFS forecast, you know, again, out past 5 days, it has tried. Now, we typically don't look past 5 days because the forecast skill isn't really there beyond 5 days, but it is interesting, nonetheless, that the European does have this as a legitimate vorticity maximum, and so does the GFS forecast. Now, I'm not going to speculate what happens beyond, 5 days or so, but that is a very interesting percolation within both models of a system either somewhere in the Florida Straits or the Gulf of Mexico within the next 5 days or so. Now, again, officially nothing from the National Hurricane Center, but it's worth watching over the next 5 days or so. And you also noticed out here another tropical wave coming off of Africa, fairly decent and healthy looking for this time of the year, coming off pretty north actually. This is coming off at about 19 to 20 north latitude here, so fairly decent. And what ends up happening is these waves split into 2 little sectors. We get a break-off wave energy coming north, and this drifts northward and dissipates in the cooler waters and drier air. And then we also have a southern maximum that tries to drift across here in a little bit more favorable environment. So the time is coming for when we do have something to start paying attention to. Again, it's not to hype anything up. It's not to really look at anything and say, oh my God, we have a system. But this is fairly interesting, and both models are now having this in the vorticity maximum. You also notice out here a fairly potent ridge of high pressure out here. This is basically sending any waves to the south here, not really allowing any waves to come further off to the north. A big ridge of high pressure out here that is basically dominating this subtropical ridge. You notice you can even follow it, basically the subtropical ridge in through here. Big old wave pushing these storms out here. And again, if this persists into the peak of the Atlantic season, this will be very interesting to see exactly what happens. And again, this is the European ECMWF 850 millibar zonal wind anomalies, basically taking a look at the westerly and easterly winds. This in the orange colors is your westerly winds, and in the purple your easterly winds. And look what continues to happen. You get a favorable pattern over the next 6 to 10 days for westerly winds that continues to warm the main development region off the Cabo Verde Islands. The pattern is there certainly for persistent warming. It does look like that we might have something finally starting to take advantage of this, and this moves all the way out to July 27th, almost now into the 1st of August. So we will be watching this very carefully. And just real quickly, this is the European ECMWF mean sea level pressure normalized anomalies, basically a 1981 to 2010 climatology time frame. And you notice even throughout the next 240 hours, and this is the one time we'll go out here, the whole entire basin basically in the Atlantic is below normal anomalies. You're not seeing a persistent high anomaly value out here, suggesting any super high trade winds screaming across this area. You're not seeing that. And this is very important because this helps to further enhance tropical cyclone genesis across any of these waves that do try to develop. Again, You know, we still do have a lot of dry, stable air out here, and people have talked about this. This is basically the climatology for this time of the year. We are likely not to see a repeat of 2013 or, any 1970 or anything like that where the season is below normal. It's a fairly substantial likelihood that we will not see a 2013 repeat. There's so many factors that are playing into the tropical cyclone formation potential this year. I mean, these tropical waves, you look at them, it's only July 17th. And again, that just goes to show that the pattern is more favorable over this part of the world. And these dry Saharan air outbreaks, they're typical for this time of the year. It's the climatology norm, and this will shift over the next several weeks or so to a more favorable base day. All right. So now's the time to prepare. Now's the time to get ready for tropical cyclones as we begin to, enter the, ramp up to the peak of the Atlantic hurricane season this year. This is going to be a very active season, undoubtedly, and more than likely. There's a lot of factors going for it. Yes, there is some factors currently going against it, but again, this will not be a 2013 season. And if it is, well, we better all enter witness protection program because this is likely to be a very busy season, all right? And again, one is reminded not to take note of how busy a season is. 2010 was a very busy season with multiple systems out here in the main development region, and they all almost turned all out to sea across here. So it doesn't matter how busy or not busy or, inactive a season is. 1992 was a fairly inactive season, didn't have its first A-name storm until, August, and that first A-name storm was Hurricane Andrew. Category 5 monster in the South Florida. Again, it only takes one. All right? So with that being said, now's the time to prepare. Now's the time to start getting ready for when these tropical cyclones do come, because they will happen. All right? Well, that is it for me today. All right? That is going to be it for me today. Hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. Of course, I am Michael Romali, and I'll see you guys back here tomorrow with another Hurricane Outlook discussion. Stay safe, everyone, and have a great day.